I'm so happy to be here. Hello, my name is Rebecca Weidenbenner, GM of Business Development at the Trade Desk, and I am here with some incredible marketing leaders to talk about innovation. I have Paloma Azulay from McDonald's, Carmen Graf from Indeed, James Clarke from Newell, and Paloma Azulay from McDonald's. And we're here to talk about innovation, which can mean, did I mess it up?
You just missed me. That's okay. You gave Paloma a double shout out.
Paloma Azulay. I knew I was going to do that. Carmela, Luzzi from Tripadvisor. Thank you. The wonderful.
I was fishing for like a cheer, so thank you.
You got it. Okay, so we're here to talk about innovation, but that can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. We've got AI-driven personalization. We've got immersive formats, new channels emerging even before we've figured out the previous channels. We've got changes in measurement, but innovation isn't the point. This is all about earning the moment with your customers. You know, for McDonald's, that's about the habitual morning coffee, the Friday evening fries after soccer practice. For Newell, it's that carefully considered purchase that helps improve your daily life. For Indeed and Tripadvisor, that moment becomes much more rarefied air. That's harder to reach, that person planning their next big trip or a big career change. So we've got a ton of innovation happening right now between storytelling formats, but the point of innovation is answering the question, how does a brand show up when it counts? So we're going to hear it from the brands themselves. Okay, so one of the topics that came up in our prep conversation that just drove so much energy from this group was the idea of fandom. And not just as a cultural moment, but fandom as a media strategy. And so I'm really excited to dig into this topic with you all. And Paloma, we'll start with you. McDonald's lives in this incredible cultural place. How has that shaped your creator and influencer strategy? And what does meaningful brand participation look like to you?
Well, it's easy to talk about fans when we are looking at a brand like McDonald's. Over the past 70 years, because of our presence in everyday life, people have a lot of love for our food. We play a very important role from dinners and lunches and late nights. And the core of it is really about understanding that we play a place in their lives. And when we look at, for example, we have more than 18 billion views of user-generated content on YouTube last year. And this is not ads we created. This is just people sharing their moments, their reviews with our food. So it's really a powerful place to be, to start, to continue empowering and co-creating our brand with our fans. A couple of examples of how that can look like is always starting by looking at what we call fan truths. Fan truths are human insights that are true about the brand and about our consumers. They can be true around the world. For example, a very famous fan truth for McDonald's is that you can travel around the world and you're always curious to visit a McDonald's. So there is a McDonald's here at the Crozet, close to the Palais.
There's the intersection with travel here.
Here, Tripadvisor, exactly. So people love to travel around the world and stop by at a McDonald's and eat something local and share, or eventually eat a classic like a Big Mac. So based on this idea that is true around the world, we created a platform called World Menu Heist, where literally there is a heist of menu items that we bring from one country to another. And it's so powerful because we basically just bring innovation from Philippines to the UK, from Brazil to Germany. And people go crazy posting and reviewing our products around the world. So it's a platform centered on participation, centered on a human truth. And another recent example that is actually on air right now is our World Cup campaign. I'm cheering for Brazil tonight. And we also put fan co-creation and participation at the center of this campaign. First, because we always find through collectibles a way of giving people a piece of the World Cup. So we have a great collection of cups. We have the Happy Meal. But above all, we looked for insights of like teenagers, how they engage with soccer. And they do that through trick shots. So we partner with creators like Dude Perfect, Michelle Karen, Nick DiGiovanni. We also created amazing content with soccer athletes like Ronaldinho and Yamal. And the content is performing so well because it feels really authentic. and natural. So these are just a few examples of how we are encouraging and leveraging fan participation.
Wonderful. Well, and McDonald's as a part of day-to-day life looks a little bit different than Newell products in a day-to-day life. James, your business operates in this entirely different category of high-functioning products. You found really creative ways to tap into entertainment and fandom to drive both engagement, but also shopping behaviors. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you've used this approach to really learn more about commerce media's potential and its ability to both serve as a shopping vehicle and as a brand building vehicle?
Sure, happy to. So even in what we've seen is even in high functionality categories, right, like baby gear and feeding, it's not just about, the product features and benefits in terms of what drives that conversion, right? There's a lot of emotionality around, if you think about that milestone as whether you're a first parent or it's your second or third child, that's a highly emotional milestone. And so that's where this notion of fandom and entertainment has come into play for us. And so, we've done a lot of great experimentation leaning in with our partners at Amazon with their live product. And we've run a number of campaigns, found a really good sweet spot and rhythm in terms of partnering with talent from reality TV. So we've worked with talent from Bravo's Southern Charm to Netflix's Love is Blind. And we've, learned a lot through the process. So, firstly, I'd say we've really demonstrated that, the right talent can kind of make or break your campaign, right? And while follower count certainly is correlated to reach, it doesn't necessarily always translate to conversion. So, thinking across those two campaigns, for example, we had one talent, very, very high following, but her conversion, her ability to storytell, especially through the live stream selling, it just wasn't quite as authentic, as the other talent that we had. So while she had a much smaller following, wasn't necessarily as well known, her conversion rate was so much higher that the total dollars that she drove over the course of the full campaign, was basically 3x our other campaign. I would say we also, certainly saw through this the importance of emotionality in terms of authentic life moments. So in the case of Madison LaCroix from Southern Charm, who we partnered with, the conversion rate on her baby reveal moment was far out past her live stream sell. And which again just indicated for us the correlation there to authenticity and also emotionality of a moment, truly having an outsized impact on performance. And then last but not least, I'd say for us, it's not just about that live stream sell, right? It's about the ecosystem of creative and assets that then are created off the back of that one moment. So it's slicing and dicing kind of the best of, deploying that across a whole host of various ad vehicles. And then through that, that's where we're driving millions of sales on brands like Graco and Nook over the course of, 6-week campaigns.
That's wonderful. And really the idea of fandom and emotion connecting with each other are really key here. Carmen, Indeed operates at this very emotional level. A job change is a big deal. It's a huge undertaking. It's our careers, it's our lives, it's our identities.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit more about how fandom shows up for you? And, you've talked about this through the lens of community building and people and how they participate in those communities specifically.
Yes. If you think about it, we like to think about like economic pressure, right? Changes the way people make decisions. LLMs now change the way people discover. Audiences' needs change all the time. Where we look at fandom and community is really all about belonging and where we build trust. And trust is more important today, I believe, than it ever has been. And so we have leaned in. We're part of Eintracht. We sponsor Eintracht Frankfurt, Utrecht out of the Netherlands, Brentford now out of the UK, and we just signed Oracle Red Bull Racing F1, which is very exciting for us. But if you think about that, like where does Indeed and Oracle Red Bull Racing meet outside of the emotional, of course, piece to it, is that it's all about the talent. And how do you build a team? So if you think about Oracle Red Bull Racing and the team that has to be built to win, it's not just the driver, right? It is the skills and the team that's built around them, from the mechanic to the data analyst to the, I don't know what he's called, but he reads wind speeds and things like that. And all of those skills come together to build a winning team. And that's really from a kind of a consumer standpoint where we are. It also, on the employer side, gives us a really differentiated way to meet with our top clients, right? And give them a different experience and have deeper conversations and build more of a partnership with them there. Again, in a highly emotional environment. So we are fandom all in.
Love it. So what I'm hearing is, whether it's rooting for your favorite racing team or rooting for your favorite Bravo celebrity to have a boy or a girl, that emotional connection really matters, and that the richest brand moments are not just about something contextual, but about showing up in the context of that moment and not just creating it yourself.
Yeah.
It's not just about targeting, it's more about belonging. Belonging to the team, belonging to the Bravo clubhouse. Okay, Carmela. Tripadvisor lives entirely in passion, building on this idea of fandom, but in travel, like we're all here in Cannes, we all have this relationship with travel, highly emotional. I want to use your perspective to take us onto our next topic: how you actually measure what's working. Travel has such high consideration, high emotional, very long planning cycles, and you've talked about building a flywheel for more organic connections, really building on this idea of emotion. Can you walk us through how Tripadvisor thinks about that? And as you move into measuring incrementality specifically and with influencers, what's your approach, and how are you figuring out where to put the next best dollar?
The bajillion-dollar question. There's a lot in there, but I would say, like, from an organic perspective, obviously we're using social as like our playground, right? So we work with our influencer agency, who helps us really like streamline the process to get dozens and dozens of influencers on at a time. Also, we like streamline the briefing process. I would say year one of working with them, we were like super strict. Like, you have to say these things about Tripadvisor and Viator, and you have to not say these things. And also, here's like a creative idea. You should go do that creative idea. We've totally stripped back briefing, and we're basically like, some core tenets: go do the thing that you know will activate your audience. And then we are tracking from like upper funnel to low funnel conversion. Then we are using like the best performing organic assets based on like a weighted measurement scale of what to put into paid. So certain influencers are great, as you were saying, at like upper funnel awareness, but really bringing them down funnel is different, which is fine because they were briefed that way. But what we'll do is grab in like who we think will really convert the best, because our page strategy is, yes, tapping into those audiences and those fans and those passionate travelers. I should call our passionate page. And then converting them in a high intent moment. So we really take like what's working on the influencer side, creator flywheel that into paid, and we're looking for, again, the most likely to convert, highest intent traveler, serving them with that, maybe that particular influencer, but then supporting that particular ad with our propensity model for other products that they might be interested in based on what they're searching, who they're following, all that kind of good stuff. And then I'll say about incrementality, we have instituted an extraordinarily robust system, a couple of them actually. So we are instituting an MMM right now. We have a couple of different reads. I feel like I've been talking about that a lot, and everybody's like experience is a little bit different. It's certainly a good way to plan. Is it the silver bullet? No, but that's okay too. We've also instituted a causal inference model. So we're working with all the platforms like the Trade Desk, and we're running a lot of really great incrementality campaigns and finding out exactly, like, based on exposure, would you or would you not have bought anyway by seeing this ad or not? And based on the answer, you're either incremental or not. And so based on those tests, we then, again, funnel more dollars in. But we also balance that investment in media with creative, because you could try to make the media work so hard, like make the next dollar, because that incrementality test proved it worked on the retargeted audience versus the prospected audience. And like, then you lose the magic that is actually fostering that conversion. So we're really careful about the tension of the investment, but we certainly, once we prove something, we start moving a little bit more up funnel and using the causal inference model and the MMM to help us dictate that in a data-backed way.
Well, there's definitely been a theme this can around not relying too heavily on performance, because you can't give up brand for performance. The brand is still so important. Okay, so we've mentioned incrementality. I haven't seen too many people in the audience fully wince at that phrase yet, or MMM, anyone traumatized? But is there anything for this group, a kind of open question here, what are you measuring that you weren't 2 years ago?
I think definitely we are spending more time measuring the impact of earned media, right? I think paid media continues to be very important. It's always good to look at what are your owned assets. We are privileged at McDonald's. We own restaurants, and for every campaign we have restaurant services, we have packaging, we have our drive-through. So we do have many surfaces that we measure the impact on that. But when it comes to earn, it is indeed the true participation. Are people talking about the work? Are people creating more user-generated content? Do we see that multiplier of like creating a first fire and then it's becoming a bigger source of conversation? So we are definitely looking at more earned media, but I would say that the traditional metrics are still very important. Ultimately, are more people coming to the restaurant? Are people eating more of our food? Are we increasing the average check? How much people spend in the restaurant? Because ultimately, you want to drive the impact to the business. And you also want to shape the perception of the brand. So we do look at brand image, how people perceive the brand. And it's really interesting to see in the long-term brand building is something that for a brand like McDonald's, and I think for every brand, if it's a startup, a new brand, you need to build awareness and shape perception. And when you look at over the past 5 years, are we increasing the notion that it's a cool brand for teens? It's a great place to eat for families. So when you look at a 10-year trend, 5-year trend, it's really interesting to see how the consistency of the work is paying off.
Anyone else want to take a stab at this?
I'll just put out real quickly, 20 seconds, all a great list. I'll just say that more than anything, because of the technology, we're able to measure far more signals, right? And far more signals, far more quickly. And so what I would say is we're measuring everything from an incrementality standpoint, but the result of that is we anchor our strategy. But what it's really done for us is allow us to anchor a strategy, but have a live system around it. So the strategy is our anchor, but we're constantly fluid, adapting based on all the signals that we're reading.
Well,
I was just
go ahead,
gonna say, the methodologies evolve, right? But the focus on the outcomes that matter in terms of moving one's business forward, they persist, right? That hasn't changed for some of the statements you were making.
Wonderful. Well, Carmen, you used the phrase signals, and you talked about there's more signal than ever before. And now there's an entirely new set of signals coming through with the entrance of AI and LLMs. And no one has really figured out how to put all this to work yet, because it's still so new. So let's talk about it. And James, I'm going to start with you, because what you said in our prep really struck this entire group. You were talking about how your dollars need to work double duty, not just signals for targeting your consumers most effectively, but also how you use the right signals to drive agentic commerce. Can you unpack that and how Newell is really thinking about this shift?
Sure, I'll try my best. So certainly there's the human side of marketing persists, right? We need to influence people, but now there's this double duty, the duality, right? The need to now figure out this whole new level of how do we now influence the machines as well, right? And so certainly through a media lens, right, we're still measuring against outcomes and what we can do and move from a human standpoint. But this is where we're now leaning in with new partners. So for us, we have a partnership with a company called Profound, and they're helping us, first off, basically create a baseline for, whether it's Graco or Sharpie. It's helping us understand, well, where are our brands presently sitting in terms of how visible are they to the end consumer through the large language models? It's been fascinating to see that certainly each one does have its own secret sauce, right? So that visibility is not uniform across the board. It varies by LLM. And then helping us map back and understand, well, what are the citations, right, that are then driving that visibility? What are the LLMs referencing, right? So by then establishing that benchmark, the baseline, we're able to now run experiments, right? And what we're seeking to understand is what are the levers within our control that we can pull to then ultimately impact the outcome that we're trying to drive, which is improved visibility to the end shopper, the end consumer in the LLMs, right? And making sure that the right messaging is pulling through and we're showing up in a way that we want to show up. So we're very much in the test and learn phase, and then where we hope to take it once we've better established, well, what is within our control, right? How can we drive the right outcomes? Then it's pre-testing, right? So it's pre-testing and it's also impacting the plan. So we may be making choices on where we're investing dollars a bit differently because now we're again looking at performance with humans, but also the performance in signal generation for the LLMs. And conversely, on the creative side, right, we as an industry, we've put so much time and energy and money into understanding drivers of creative performance in terms of impacting humans, right? The brilliant basics in digital, as Meta likes to say, right? We're trying to establish those same brilliant basics in terms of LLM influence, and then we'll be pre-testing creative to not only make sure it's working hard for us and driving outcomes with humans, but also with the machines.
And we were talking backstage about how creative is really this one thing that AI cannot replace the human touch with. Like, it's such a precious thing. And Carmela, when we were talking about travel and this category as a whole, if you rely on AI, suddenly every hotel ad looks exactly the same. And you've got this 25 years now of community building, of building editorial trust with your audiences. How are you using LLMs as an asset? How are you, making sure you're protecting your brand while also leaning into a place where users are spending their time?
Yeah, sort of as Carmen mentioned earlier, obviously like discoverability and that path to like planning has changed a lot. A lot is happening, zero click, everything in AIOs. And so obviously the LLMs are doing a good job, honestly, of like scraping and understanding and learning what we have on like highly rich content sites like Tripadvisor. We, at the corporate level, have some significant partnerships with all the major players across the LLMs. So we want to make sure that our content surfaces there. Like, it's important to be where our customer is. And so, the monetization of that is where it gets a little tricky, obviously, but I think we're still working it out. Frontier, we'll get to where we need to go. What's most important is that we think about traveler first all the time. And so if that's where our traveler is, and that's where we will be. Another sort of strategy we've started to really hit hard is on YouTube. So if you're searching, YouTube is like the second most biggest place people search, and it's especially true for travel. And so the more content we can get up there, the better. How you do that fast, though, is with some like inclusion of AI. So we're still really stuck to making sure, like, if you're looking at, the group wine tour, those are real images, real either content we've shot or from our community, and it's UGC. And to make sure that we can get like a little bit, again, at scale, we're doing stuff like scripting, AI voiceovers, and even some of like music selection. We've now been able to like teach an AI prompt like how to like what's the best prompt to get the best music, and we've cut out like 4 hours on every video just doing that. We created an internal AI copy coach, we call it, so we input all our past brand like guidelines around copy from the site, like on content and otherwise, and that has significantly increased time to produce. So that's sort of how we're working with it. We're working with the LLMs to provide the information that our consumers really want in that discoverability phase, and then we're playing with creative on the spaces and the places we know they are.
I think that's brilliant. I was just going to say, don't sleep on YouTube, right? And if you, any of the brand marketers in the room, if you are not syndicating or producing content for shorts, right, that's a major outage because that whole ecosystem is so highly cited by Gemini. So make sure that's the lowest hanging fruit, I'd say. Like, not all of our brands were doing that initially, and now we're making sure that, we're treating shorts as a channel equally as important to Instagram or TikTok.
That's amazing. Thank you for that snippet. So with AI, it has never played a bigger role than in something like job applications and what job seekers are doing. If anyone's updating their resume, I'm sure you know. Great place to network too. But Carmen, you've talked about that resumes are starting to look pretty darn similar because of this. So everyone's starting to look alike, which was such an interesting takeaway for me. How has Indeed responded, and what does this mean for you to be marketing similar to James to two different audiences, both job seekers and employers, but also these AI platforms?
Yeah, it is kind of ironic, right? AI gave us kind of all of these superpowers, but what happened is that CHROs and HR decision makers, where they used to get 100 applicants a week, they're now getting 500, and they all look perfect. They have a completely perfect tailored CV to the job description. They have a perfectly tailored cover letter. And so it's really hard to find kind of the right, and we're a dual-sided marketplace. We serve both the job seeker, of course, and we serve the employer. So our win is to make that perfect match. So what have we done is what you asked. And I like to call it, we're using AI for good. So we have created products that essentially allow us to, when people go into their profile in Indeed, it's expanded now. So you can put what your ambitions are, what your skills are, what your certifications are, what your desires are, what you're looking for in a job. And so we have 610 million job seeker profiles, and that is a lot of data. But if anyone can go in and complete their profile, they're almost 5 times more likely to hear from an employer. And that's pretty compelling. So we are doing that. We've created kind of sourcing and screening, and we also work with the employers, so we know what the job spec is and what the job description is. So it allows us to make that match in a far simpler and better way. I like to call it AI for good. And in terms of your question on the LLM, because I know we're getting close to time, I just look at it as another audience, if you will, because what's happening right now is you have to earn, not build. You have to earn the trust and credibility to show up as an answer within an LLM. And so if people are looking for, how do I negotiate a salary? Give me career advice. How do I talk about my skills? Here's what I think I'm good at. All of that, we have to make sure Indeed is the answer, because we have a lot of resources that can be helpful to people with all that data.
Yeah, there's definitely a theme here of the importance of authenticity and showing up where your audiences are. It is not interesting when we're all the same or when we serve our audiences all the same things. We're coming up on time here, so we're going to do a lightning-ish round to close it out. You know, we've talked about fandom, measurement, AI, and underneath it all is how do we organize ourselves to move at the speed of innovation, which is fast right now. So let's give everyone something to chew on heading into lunch. Down the line here, Paloma, you sit at the intersection of creative and brand at McDonald's, one of the most culturally present companies. What's the most exciting creative opportunity for you in the next 12 to 18 months?
I believe it's continuing to partnering with our fans and giving them tools to express themselves and express their love for McDonald's. We also look at it and we have amazing icon-to-icon partnership opportunities, but we also look at our brand as a massive universe that has so many assets and IP that belongs to the brand, and especially with nostalgia being such an important I don't even think it's a trend. It's a macro force, right? I think with everything becoming the same, we're looking back and we want that comfort. So how do we continue refreshing our IP? We have great campaigns like the Grimace birthday. People love our characters. So how we continue leveraging them and mashing up them with other properties. So I do believe the future is indeed building your own assets and giving fans and people in general the tool to participate and create something on their own.
Thank you. Carmen, you mentioned Indeed touches more than 610 job seekers, or 10 million job seekers. You're operating at a scale where the decisions you make about AI affect a huge portion of the workforce. What's the North Star you keep coming back to? And I think you've already shared it.
Yeah, well, no, the North Star is we help people get jobs. That's our North Star.
Love it. James, you talked about this idea of media orchestration as innovation in itself. What structural challenges do you think brands are most under-prepared for?
Succinctly put, I'd say the biggest opportunity is getting rid of the silos, right? So the way organizations have traditionally been structured, it does not align to how consumers shop and research these days, right? And so one of the things that we've done at Newell that attracted me to join Newell actually was the fact we think in terms of total media. So my team works end to end across every aspect of media, and what that then allows is rather than being stuck in one silo and advocating singularly for one's own seat, we're now being able to more effectively make trade-offs right across all various types of media and really do what's best in terms of driving most accretive outcomes for our organization. So I would say getting rid of the silos, thinking holistically, but also setting up the organizational structures that actually enable that is, going to be basically a non-starter into the future.
Wonderful. Well, and Carmela, closing us out while we are at the beautiful location here, through the lens of travel, you've talked about the risk of fabrication when it comes to travel content. What does responsible AI-assisted creative look like for you for Tripadvisor going forward?
I think it's for us to continue to stay true to our UGC community, to continue to be true to the fact that if we are going to use AI, we're going to tell you, and that transparency is going to be king. It's I think the only way that you're going to continue to keep those connections and that authenticity alive, and it's the best way for us to continue to move forward alongside AI versus against it.
Well, I'm so glad we could all build the connections with each other here. There are some really interesting through lines across QSR, travel, CPG, and recruiting and hiring. It's incredible to see these connections. Thank you all for sharing with this group.
Thank you.
Stay cool, everybody.
Nice.